Hi everyone, so now we're going to do into another Arcane deep dive. This time we're going to look at Caitlyn Cameron. Now, many of the characters in Arcane are very well fleshed out. We know the motivations of many of the characters, and it's not like a keyword cut out here. It's like, someone evil for being evil, or someone good just because, they're good. You kind of have an idea that different people have different views on life, they have different backgrounds, and all of these things shape how they do the things they do, why they decide to do the things they do. And of course, there are instances of strengths and weaknesses that, of course, all you see is fairly understandable. Now, the thing is, though, in the case of Caitlyn, there are a couple of things that just make you go, hmm, I don't quite get it. So for example, like in the case of say a different character like Mel Roberta, you start off with a very clear arc. Mel starts off as kind of a person who is more of a manipulator, someone who seems to be after power and status. I mean, she complains about, she's the poorest of the Modernas, and then you realize later that all she's really doing is playing the game because that's the game she's good at, she's used to, and would rather play rather than use violence. The kind of the way of the wolf, as her mother, Mel's mother, that is, uh, enjoys. So, doing that, we have pretty much idea that, of course, Mel's a complex character, and we know what's going on. Now, Caitlyn is different. Caitlyn is kind of like in the first half where there are like lots of question marks, and then in the later half, it's like her relationship with Vi almost takes over. That some of the stuff just gets thrown in the background, and we hope I very hope that at least in season two it's fleshed out more, but who knows? So let's just kind of look at this bit by bit here. So first of all, first image of Caitlyn is here. So she's carrying the tools for Jace in this case, and of course she's like up, looking up to Jace because he went down into the other city and that was so cool and stuff. Now, when you look at this, and then you also look at this particular image here, you might get the impression that Jace and Caitlyn have a thing, maybe girlfriend boyfriend. It's hard to really tell given the kind of lack of information that's going on here. I mean, at a minimum, you know that Jace is the protege, Caitlyn is the Cameron's daughter, so they've probably known each other for a while. So you have that. And what's also interesting in this particular scene in of itself is that Caitlyn says that Jace has been called a misfit, so that's why he's, almost banished, so to speak. And Caitlyn is out there in the rain, but Caitlyn calls herself a misfit for being out there. But what's very interesting is you would think that Caitlyn kind of identifies with that word because of what we learn later. So in episode 4, and they've grown up, and you can kind of see the banter between them back and forth. So it's not like they were ever girlfriend boyfriend. It's more like they were friends, childhood friends. They know each other. They know how to kind of push each other's buttons a little bit and be sarcastic and all that. So that's kind of a very interesting relationship right there. Now, here also pretty much shows that Caitlyn is interested in being more active in the police force of Piltover. But she hates the fact that she has to guard this stupid tent. And basically, she only gets this far because of her parents don't want her involved too much. And the thing is that she can't help herself because after the event at the Hexgate where one of the ships got attacked, she actually goes to the scene. And as you see the entire scene here, you see her piece together the various things that happened there. And just by looking at the evidence and taking the pictures and thinking through all the things that the scene shows, and you see the flashbacks as they show up, it's like, oh, this is really good. This is like almost looking at, for example, like Sherlock Holmes and how he puts things together. And so you can see that this person here knows a little bit about detective work and knows about how to work a crime scene and knows how to put things together. So obviously not someone who, is doing it for the first time. And that's kind of borne out in the fact that here we have this interaction between Caitlyn and Marcus, because Marcus is complaining about Caitlyn interfering in a investigation yet again. So Caitlyn like really wants to get involved in these kind of crime investigation scenes, and Marcus is having none of it. So there is that. And then you have this, which of course shows the kind of physical as well as psychological distance between Caitlyn and the rest of the cops, at least in this area. Because you pretty much see here that Caitlyn's, because she's posh, she's upper class, she's not like one of those people there in the police force. They're a little bit more lower class. And they make fun of her. So it's hard for her to actually be one of them. So you look at that and you're like, okay, her parents don't want her to be in the police force. Marcus probably doesn't want her to be nosing around, getting in his way. And, the rank and file don't want her there either. So she is kind of a misfit, so to speak, within the whole enforcer police force of Piltover. So why is she so motivated? It's a really fascinating thing here. I mean, she is like completely obsessed. You see the kind of the red strings there. If you've ever seen like some conspiracy thing, the crazy guy with the red strings all over the place. It's like it has those vibes going there. But it's like she's really interested in figuring this thing out. Which again kind of asks the question is like, why? Why is she so obsessed? Even Vi in a much scene much later just kind of says, and I thought Potter was obsessed. So obviously, even looking from Vi's point of view, is Caitlyn's really obsessed over solving this particular mystery. And at least the show is kind of aware of the fact that they need to get around to making a clear mention of the motivation. Because they have this scene right here. And in this scene, basically at the end of it, Grayson basically asks Caitlyn, okay, what are you shooting for? And this is a scene where maybe like you fill in the blanks, like, oh, I'm shooting for to protect the city of Piltover, or, maybe like that's kind of the realization or something. But even when you think about that, is like, why? I mean, here's a girl who grew up in a family of, patricians. The father seems to be, a nice guy. He doesn't seem to be like a rough and tumble, guy. And the mom just seems to be like really, a patrician type lady, who is a counselor. So where is this coming from? Is there some sort of event in her childhood that really kind of encouraged her or motivated her to be so obsessed about solving crime and getting the bad guys in Piltover? Or is there like some aspect of her father that we don't know about that maybe inspired her or motivated her to do something? I mean, at least you can kind of see in a few scenes that her father is a little bit more of an ally than her mother is, but that's kind of normal dynamics in any family. So you have that, and it's just kind of odd that this is never really addressed to any significant degree. Plus, there's this scene right here where basically Caitlyn just kind of gets really upset at the fact she lost her job. Okay, so she goes in, she tries to save some people, the thing blows up, she barely survives. She got a cut across her face and her leg, which I think she should have been way more injured than that, but somehow, she didn't get beat up too bad. And our parents, of course, naturally want to make sure that that never happens again, and so kind of pushed her off the police force. Jace was kind of as a way to at least get her to have some sort of closeness to investigating or to the police force. It kind of gives her a desk job, which she's like, I don't want that. I want to actually be in the field. I want to do the investigating. Is her feelings on the matter of that, and so she's like, just like really upset. Now, of course, she goes back and takes the job because she doesn't have any other way to actually find out, who is the criminal mastermind between the attack on the academy and the attack on the Hexgate. She really wants to know that. Again, why? Why is she so obsessed? We do not know. We're never find out any of this particular motivation. So you have that, and the story moves along. So the story then moves along to the point where, again, she meets Vi, but of course, all the only reason is she releases Vi is because she wants to find out about who Silco is and try to get evidence so that she can go to the council and say, look, Silco is the guy that did it. We have all the evidence. We got the goods. Case solved situation. Now, that is like the main motivation in this character up until this point. And then stuff happens. We find out, at least kind of incidentally, I guess, that Vi is not necessarily attracted to guys. Again, there's no. I mean, you can kind of look at it and say, okay, yeah, she's attracted to women. Fine. I mean, that's certainly a thing. And here you see basically a situation where Caitlyn is just kind of okay. Vi is seriously injured. There's not a really good way to deal with the fact that she got stabbed. And if you know anything about how Vi got stabbed, it's like that is going to be a guaranteed slow death. I mean, that was really deep in the gut, and that could definitely kill people. Of course, I imagine that Caitlyn doesn't really know that, but she does know it's pretty serious, and so she trades in her gun for something that might help, which does good. Now, you can kind of look at this and say this is kind of moderately big sacrifice in the fact that up until now, her gun has basically been the thing that she's really good at. She knows how to shoot. It's been the thing that's protected her, and she had a long relationship with shooting in general. We see a lot of scenes about this, so there is that. But again, it's like a very interesting scene. And also we notice that Caitlyn's not stupid. She takes the bullets out and then trades the gun. Kind of very smart here. Now, again, as you can kind of see in the fight between Echo and her here, she's still kind of naive in that she still feels that there's no way that the enforcers would of course punish Echo's team without a reason. But of course, from the viewer point of view, it's like, well, we've seen basically enforcers treat people in the Undercity like crap. So Echo is definitely definitely like, what are you talking about? That's like so idiotic. However, Caitlyn's kind of naive in a sense, and also someone who wants to break this cycle of violence, and so she has that kind of sense of justice, and also at least understanding that violence is not the way. Though you can kind of see that as kind of idealistic situation. So you got that still lingering around as part of the motivation is like, oh well, she's still naive and kind of idealistic type of person, definitely has a strong sense of justice. And then you have the lovely scene where of course the both of them get caught by the mom who has a shotgun. Just here is just lovely shot here. Just wanted to add that. And then when Caitlyn addresses the council, this is kind of like the idea of like, do you really have a plan? So Caitlyn brings Vi out and then, of course, basically says, we have the evidence. We know that Silco is the guy that did the thing. And she wanted to, basically discuss this with Jace and the rest of the council, hoping that they would do something about it. Now, what's interesting here is the conflict that pops up here. So when Jace kind of puts a more aggressive tack about actually, bringing the battle down to the Undercity, first of all, Caitlyn's kind of taken aback. There are good people there too. Why you have changed? Why are you so aggressive? Is kind of the thing going on here with Caitlyn. So you look at this and okay, so basically Caitlyn is thinking about all we need to do is just get Silco. That's what we don't need to do. We don't need to do any rough stuff with the Undercity and all that. And what kind of brings interesting conflict here is the fact that Vi is like, let's go down there and let's take out Silco, and it doesn't matter if we bring the war down to the Undercity, just all I care about is wiping out Silco and his empire, bringing that thing crumbling down and stuff. That's kind of Vi's priority. So you kind of look at that, and it's like, while these two people have been talking, it's like, obviously they're not quite in alignment about what should happen. Okay, yeah, Silco needs to be taken out, but the method of that is not very clear. And of course, the council is like, well, maybe we should, not really use any force, so to speak. Just figure out another way of going about it. And of course, Vi is in his bit. And of course, those two, have kind of an argument. I'll think of another plan. It's like, I'm not sure. Like the first time you were approaching this and you were talking to Jace, did you really have a plan to begin with? And I think that's kind of the thinking behind Vi. It's like, there's no way you could come up with a good plan to convince these people to do anything. They're not interested in helping here. Of course, Vi is upset because Vi wants basically Silco out of the way, and it doesn't look like the council's going to help, so she's going to have to do it by herself. And that's kind of thing. Like, I take care of it myself. I'll take care of it with this. It'll get done. And so far, Caitlyn, you haven't provided any good plan. Like, you don't have a plan now. And what's really interesting in this scene is, of course, there is a situation between, basically Vi creating distance because she's hurt and try to keep, and that's kind of the one thing she does. It's like when she's hurt, she needs to get away. But also, you can kind of see parallels between this situation and Vander. In that, again, Vander was like, okay, didn't really have a plan. So when Vi was talking to Vander about the situation between Piltover and the Undercity, because someone needed to do something about the whole explosion situation because it was starting to get out of hand, and like, well, I'll think of something. Oh, you'll think of something. And then when it ended up happening, Vi took things in her own hand. Fortunately, Vander was able to wrest control back, but that seems to be the general attitude of Vi. Is like, look, if you don't have a plan, you're just going to think about it. You probably don't have a plan. I'm going to take care of it. It seems to be Vi's pattern there. So of course that kind of upsets Caitlyn, and then you see the whole scene in the shower where she's like, oh my god, what should I have done? And after that, there is nothing. So Caitlyn has no more lines whatsoever throughout the rest of the series. So all we're kind of stuck with here is towards the end is the basic relationship between Caitlyn and Vi. And yes, okay, Caitlyn cares about Vi. She wants to make it right and try to do all things she can to at least move in that direction. But outside of that, Caitlyn's like overwhelming sense of justice, her motivation to deal with the criminal element. Where is that going? Why does she care? Why is she's so interested in being a good shot? Probably has something to do with the fact that she wanted to be on the force. But again, we don't know why. So I'm really interested in providing more detail about this in season 2 so we can get kind of a better background of what really motivates her besides just one relationship. Because what's going to end up happening, and I hope it doesn't happen, is that if we don't flesh this out, all it will be is kind of a one-note character and her relationship with Vi, and that's it. We don't want that. All the other characters are very complex characters. So I, of course, think they're going to avoid that. And hopefully, we'll get to know a lot more about what kind of person she is in season 2. Catch you later. Bye-bye.